Gentlemen, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. Okay, if we can keep our conversations down, please. A Year of Learning, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, Friends of Shmuel Ben Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who are inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka, but Meshulam Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents. Mushka Friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen. Friends and family of Siggy Bessler, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov. Friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer Ben Yisrael Aaron. Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Ben Hillel. A Month of Learning by Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia Ben Moshe Yehuda Kohen. Icon Evelyn Bachor Hakarat Hatov, for his continuing recovery from written surgery. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig, in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Henshita Bat Chaim Yehuda. Hannah and David Grunblatt, in memory of her mother, Roisa Bat Chaim. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Uncle Yehudis Bas Eliyahu. Henry Katz and children, in memory of his wife, Lila Leah Mincha Bat Yehuda. Mel and Haron Haller, in memory of his mother, Fega Bat Yaakov. A Week of Learning by Andrew and Stephanie Becker, in memory of his sister, Yocheved Bat Ze'ev. And today, being the 21st of the month, Ernie Bloom, in memory of his mother, Alta Chana Bat Harav Yechael. And Sharon Smith, in memory of her husband, Ben Yisrael, and her mother, Devorah Bat Dov Chaim. And the Shemas have no fear without the Yeshua Shemat clear. Oh, B'nai Israel could get benched. Yeah. Okay, an announcement for the Siyum from Heshi and from Mel. Okay. Siyum for Baba Kama will be Thursday, February 29th at Century Grill at 3:30 p.m. Please inform. 3:30. Well, that depends if you eat that.
No, that's a whole program.
Okay, we'll do this, the learning first and then the eat. Your words. Please inform Heshi or Plotkin or Mal, by Tuesday, February 27th.
Okay, Rabosa, years ago in Eretz Yisrael, I had a student who came to the yeshiva. He was a professor of logic. Quite a accomplished guy, but he wasn't familiar with the scientific works of Torah. Most people are not. And I introduced him to a book called the Derech Tevunos. Derech Tevunos is a book that's a potpourri of linguistics and logic and categories, a bunch of things together. To show him some type of method in Talmudic learning. So he sat down to read the book, and I was really taken with the comment that he had. This is the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and he reads the book, and he said, he says, this person really wanted to help people. And I was surprised. He really wanted to help people. So I was surprised by the comment first, and I was delighted by it. Why? Because you'll see, unfortunately, in the secular world, often scholarly works don't really want to help the people that they're writing for. They want to show what they can do, but they're not really out to help you. You understand? They keep the ball away from you, kind of. So I loved it very much, and of course, that's the goal of every Talmud Chacham, wants to always help people. In any case, in the interest of being helpful today, I would like you to go back for a minute, go backwards, and it'll make today's daf, which is otherwise, sometimes a little elusive, will make it much, much easier. It'll be more helpful. So let's take a look. Let's go back, please. We're going to be on Kuf Yud Aleph, but I want you to go back to the Mishnah. Where's the Mishnah? Yeah, on Kuf Yud. Thank you. The Mishnah on Kuf Yud. So you'll see towards the end of the Mishnah, it says the following. Yeah, on Kuf, you have 110. Yeah. Okay, now. See, remember we were speaking about, okay, yeah. Okay. No Kesef Lo Yari. Remember, we're going to talk about, we have a case where the person stole from a ger, and the ger died without inheritors. So we learn from the pasuk that the money has to go to the Kohanim, and the sacrifice has to be sacrificed. So now, because he swore falsely, but that he didn't steal. Now we're going to talk about group one and group two in the order of the Kohanim, whose turn it is in the Beis Hamikdash. I'm going to look. We're going to look in the Mishnah. He said in the Mishnah, "Nosan hakesef lo yariv." If they gave the money to Yoyariv, which is the right order, to group number one, and he gave the sacrifice to group two, and we're going to learn they gave the money in week one to week one's group, and he gave the sacrifice in week two, and he gave the sacrifice to week two to week two's group. Yotza, he's Yotza, everything is fine. Why? Because there's no problem. In fact, it's even correct to bring first the money and then to bring the sacrifice. But if in the opposite, he gave first the sacrifice to the group one of Kohanim in week one, the Kesef Liyadaya, and he gave the money to group two in group two. Im Kayama Asham, if in the second week two, group two in week two, if the sacrifice is still extant, okay, so then what? Then we would find group one. They'd have to give the sacrifice to group two and let them, not only do they get the money, they also get the sacrifice. Now, why is that? Because they're being punished, they're being fined for doing something wrong, for taking the sacrifice out of order. You're supposed to take the money first and then the sacrifice. So they're being fined. Okay, being low. Okay, but if the sacrifice is not there anymore, okay, no, they already sacrificed it and it's no good. But okay, so then what? Yahzir, then the thief has to go back. V'yavi Oshamachi has to bring a second sacrifice. Why? That may be Gzelo, Achaloy be Oshama Yotza. Hey, be Oshama, Achaloy be Gzelo Yotza, because you can't bring it out of order. You have to have the money has to be returned in order for the sacrifice to be kosher. The sacrifice before the money is returned, it's not a good sacrifice. But here's the main point. What we learned in the Mishnah was a case where he gave the sacrifice to group one in week one, and he gave the money to group two in week two. So group two didn't do anything wrong, okay, because group two took the money in their week. They have a right to take the money. That's no problem, okay? And the only thing is group one did wrong. Now, in theory, there's no problem. You could just wait a half a year. And then, in other words, let's say group one took the sacrifice in week one, and group two took the money in week two. So you see, the sacrifice has to be done after the money. Now the money was given in week two. All I have to do is wait till the next half a year goes by. 25, whatever it is, and then they'll bring this up. They should hold on to the sacrifice and give it, and they'll have sacrifice after the money was given. But the rabbis punished them. The rabbis fined them, and they said no, the sacrifice which they would have benefited from the meat, from the skin, etc. It's going to go to group two. So all that was on the assumption that the sacrifice was given to group one in week one, and the money was given to group two in week two. Today, all the complications today is we're going to deal with obviously the facts of our Mishnah, but we're going to deal with all kinds of other permutations. So, for example, everything happened in week one, or the week one passed, or week two passed, this, or whatever the story is. We're going to have now a bunch of permutations. We're going to have a bunch of permutations. But the way we learn the Mishnah now, even though we're going to see an argument in the Brisa, this is according to everybody. Why? Because only one group did wrong. Either you find them, or you don't find them. Group one did wrong by taking a sacrifice before the money. So they did wrong. So the rabbi said, we find them, we don't find them. But group two didn't do anything wrong. It was their week. They were allowed to take money in their week. No problem. It was their turn. And the money that was the Kohanim, and just like any money that would have been returned to Kohanim instead of to the convert who passed away goes to the Kohanim of that week. So the only people who did wrong was group one. Okay, now let's go today. We're on 111 on the second line. Okay, the last word of the line. It's coming up now. It's coming up right now. It's no good. It's no good. It's no good. You got to do it. Yeah, it's not good. You have to bring another one. That's what we're going to see. Okay, now, Nasana, we're in 110, the second line, the last word on the line. Nasan. 111. I'm so sorry. 111, the second line, last word on the line. Nasa nasa kesef lo yariv. We learned in our Mishnah. If he, I'm just going to explain group one and group two always. Okay, nasa nasa kesef lo yariv. If he gave the money to group one, okay, like this goes to, and he gave and he gave the sacrifice to group two. So we learned it. We learned in the Mishnah. He's yotze, etc. But if he did it the other way, so then we said that group one loses the sacrifice. Tana Rabbanan. Now we learned in a brisa something that we didn't expect. It said in a brisa, if he gave the sacrifice to group one, Bekesefli Yadaya, and he gave the money to group two. What did we learn? What we think that with that case, we thought we learned in the Mishnah. We learned that we find group one, and the sacrifice goes to group two. It said Yachzir. So it says here Yachzir. It says here Yachzir Hakesef Eitzel Asham. Here it says no. That group two, the money should go back and be given to the person to group one. Group two should give the money back to group one. Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. But Chachamim Omer, and the rabbis say no. They no. Group one has to give the sacrifice to what? To group two.
I couldn't give it back. They're not going to be there. They leave. The week is over.
No, so they said no. But instead of holding on to it till the next time it's their turn, they give it up. That's the point. That was the chiddush. Okay, now. Okay, now. Okay, now. Now, says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, what kind of case is this? What kind of case where Rabbi Yehuda says what? That the money goes back to group one, and the rabbis say what? No, that the sacrifice goes to group two. Hey Chidami, what's the case? If the case was that the thief gave the sacrifice to group one when it was group one's week, and he gave the money to group two when it was group two's week. Each one of them gets what belongs to them. So therefore, what? So there's really so notes. I can understand the rabbis finding. I can understand the rabbis finding group one because they took a sacrifice before the money. Okay, but I can't understand why Rabbi Yehuda would find group two to give the money back. Rabbi does this. I'll explain to you. Don't worry. This was the case. It's not the case that we said in the Mishnah where group one got the sacrifice in week one and group two got the money in week two. The answer was the he gave the sacrifice to group one in week one. The kesef liyadaya and the money to group two b'mishmarta the also in week one. So now what happened was group two really did do wrong. Why? Group one did wrong because what? Because they took a sacrifice before the money. Group two did wrong because they took money when it wasn't their turn. It wasn't their turn. Rabbi Yehuda saw. So now the question is, who's wronger? Who's wronger? Who's wronger? Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, it came with the Lav Mishmeres, the Yadayi. Rabbi Yehuda says, look, since it wasn't week two's turn, they got the money during week one, the Yadaya Kasina, so you have to find group two. Group two took money that didn't belong to them, give it back. So they have to be fined to give the money back, give money to group one. Rabbanan said, the rabbis say, no. No, it was group one that did the most wrong. The Kiblu Ashram and Kamikaze, they shouldn't take the sacrifice. They took the sacrifice before the money. Therefore, the Yadidu consider they're the ones that we have to find the Ashram Eitzel Kesef and what and the money and therefore the sacrifice they have to forfeit the sacrifice, the meat and the skin, and it will go to group two. And I told you, I often give out, if you want a real book of psychology, okay, of the Torah, which you can easily write, not like most of these silly books. Most of them are silly. All the Torah psychology books you read are just like they're for little kids. You could write a real one instead of seeking psychological stories in the Gemara. If you just analyze all the Rabbanans, you'll understand human psychology. You'll understand the rabbis' view. Because the rabbis analyze how are people likely to behave. So in the rabbis, when we give fines, or when we make decrees, or when we make enactments, or we make fences, all that is our understanding of how can we analyze human nature to the advantage of the Torah. So how can we make sure that we can manipulate human nature such that the Jews will keep the Torah and not, God forbid, transgress it. And since that's our lofty goal, the rabbis are very careful to analyze what is true human behavior. Okay, Tanya, so here's a debate, obviously, but that we can analyze. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, okay? So therefore, so number one, so that case it's not a contradiction to our mission at all. That was a different case. Everything happened in week one. Tanya, and our mission was week one and week two consecutively. Okay, Tanya, Amar Rebbe, we learned in the Brisa. Rebbe said, "L'divrei Rabbi Yehuda," according to Rabbi Yehuda, who told us that group 2 has to return the money to group 1. Okay, group 1 says, "Im kadmu b'nei Yoriv." If instead of that happening, Group 1 quickly sacrificed, if they agree with Hashem, before the money was ever given to Group 2, Group 1 sacrificed the sacrifice. In other words, so the sacrifice was sacrificed. This is what she asked. The sacrifice was sacrificed before the money was given. Then the thief has to come and bring a second asham. Yeah, he has to bring another one. Why is that? Because the first one was no good. And group 2 is going to sacrifice it, the ones who got the money. But for group 1, even though they did completely wrong, they still have a right to whatever was in their hand. So Gemara says, "Amri l'may chazi."
Plus, I mean, group 1 is considering it belongs to the who did nothing.
Yes, he did. He gave him the animal.
No.
He gave him the money. He can't go to Jerusalem till he has both the money and the animal.
Listen, he didn't follow procedure for sure. You're right, but he loses out.
He
loses out.
The fast one. Maybe they wouldn't take
Amri. So the Gemara said, 1 second, what are you talking about? What do you mean group 1 gets to keep what they have? L'may chazi, what good is it? Asham pasalu. If you bring an asham improperly, the meat is usher. So what the Kohanim are not going to get anything out of it. The answer is no, because even when the meat is not edible, but still they still have a right to the skin, so they still get them. Tanya, okay, another Bryce. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who said that group 2 has to return the money to group 1 when it happened in week 1. In Kayam Asham, if the sacrifice is he says what? Then he says no. The group 1 gives the sacrifice to group 2 with the money. I said, what are you talking about? We learned exactly the opposite. Yehuda said in that case that group 2 should give the money to group 1 because they did wrong. I says no. This is the case. There's a different case we didn't have before. Here's what happened. Group week 1 has passed. Below tabu. And group 1 did not ask for the money back. In other words, the money, group 1 got the sacrifice in week 1, and group 2 got the money in week 1. But after week 1 passed, group 1 never said, listen to group 2, never said, giving back the money, which you owe us. And therefore he teaches us that even according to Yehuda, that group 1 has forgiven the money, and therefore what? And therefore the money goes to therefore in that case, even though we said the opposite, in this case, Rabbi is going to say what? That the sacrifice goes to group 2. Tanya Edith, we learned in a different Brisa. Amar Rabbi said, according to Rabbi who said in our case what all happened in week 1, that what happened in week 1, that the money goes to group 1. Okay, in Kayim Asham, if the sacrifice is still there, they should give the money back to group 1. He says, Pshita. He says, what do you mean? Obviously, that's what we learned. That's what he said. He says, no, this is the case. To go into Nafik Mishpata Dahani Bahani. Here's what happened. Now the week 1 passed and week 2 passed. In other words, both week 1 and week 2 has passed. So Tabu, and what happened was, group 1 did not ask group 2 for the money, nor did group 2 ask group 1 for the sacrifice, and both weeks have passed. Now we're thinking that since they're both now no longer on the roster until half a year later, we think what? That they really have mutually forgiven each other, and group 1 forgave group 2 the money, and and also the same thing. And even if group 2's week has passed, and they have also not asked for the sacrifice, you think that they still get the money, and everybody keeps what they have. Kamash Malan, it's going to teach me no. Darmin, we say even according to Yehuda, Darminam, we say came to Tavla Adadu Resha, since they didn't ask each other, since they didn't ask each other originally, and therefore what? The money goes back to the sacrifice, and group 1 sacrifices it, but they wait a half a year till the time comes again, but they do it. Okay, we learned in the Mishnah, if a person pays back the money before he brings the sacrifice. Okay, that's fine. And if he did it the other way, it's no good. That's what we learn. Where do we get it from? What's the source? What's the source that bringing the sacrifice ultimately before giving the money is not a good sacrifice? Amar Rava, we learned. Amar Kol, because the pasuk said, "Asham mushav l'Hashem l'kohen." We said that the asham. Remember, we learned earlier. We called that was the principle. Even though that sounds like the sacrifice, we call that the guilt money. The money that is returned to Hashem, instead, in this case, goes to the Kohanim. Milvad El Kippurim, apart from the ram of atonement, okay, that he's going to atone with. Now, so we already learned that the Asham was the principle. So you see the principle, apart from the sacrifice, which is going to still be there. Michlal, if you see the Kesef ratio, you see what? That the money came first. So he learned the word apart from, knows this apart from the thing that's going to follow in the future. You see, I'm learning. He learned the way the Gemara is learning now. Rava learns the word apart from this, apart from the next thing to come. So really what? It's first the money and then the sacrifice. So the Gemara thinking that Rava learned apart from something that's going to happen in the future shows that in another case, Rava himself is going to be self-contradictory. What are you talking about? One of the rabbis said to her, what are you talking about? What do you mean? The asham, the money, apart from what's going to come, the sacrifice? According to you, if apart from means the thing that's going to happen in the future, what are you talking about? We learned when it came to the sacrifices of Pesach, of Passover. We said what? That you have to give the musaf sacrifices apart from the ola of the morning, apart from the tamid. Okay, they said. Okay, so that's going to come what? So if you're going to say with this apart from that, if the apart from comes later, it's going to come after the musaf comes. What? And later comes the morning tamid. Hey, chalami mechlal the musafim. According to the way you learned it now, it's going to come out. The implication is that musafim bereisha they come first. The musaf apart from what happens later, the tamid of shachris. Okay, what time did we ever know that's not true? Nothing can come before the tamid of shachris. Didn't we learn? How do we know that no sacrifice can go on the altar before the constant offering of the morning? Talmud Lomer, because we learned after he makes the pyre, makes the wood arrangement for the fire, you have to put the ola upon it. The ola, meaning what? Ola Rishona. Okay, no, it's the ola, the famous morning one that we talked about, that has to come first. So he himself, Rob himself learns that way. What are you talking about? Always it has to come first. How can you tell me now if apart from means apart from what's going to come later? How can you tell me the musaf apart from the ola? The ola is going to come later. The ola has to come first. Okay, Amar Lacey said to him, he says, no, you made a mistake. I don't learn the word apart from, meaning that apart from means what's coming later. It's from a different angle of the words that I understood that comes later. Because it said apart from Meval El Kippurim, apart from the ram of atonement, Asher Yechaper Bo, that he will atone for him with it. Nafkale. That's where it comes from. In other words, that's in the future. Since it says Yechaper, he will atone. It's going to come in the future. It's in the future tense. Vadayin keeper, but he's not doing it yet. So the answer is really what Milvad. When you say apart from, it's not. It's not conclusive. It could be apart from could be something that's going to be later. It could be apart from something that's going to come before. It's context dependent. So separate, but separate, which is before you can't tell. But since our pasuk said what Asher Yechaper, that's going to happen in the future, that he's going to atone. So in our context, we know that apart from is apart from something that's going to come later. So we did fine. Now we know for sure what that the money has to come before the sacrifice. Not so much like Karen. Okay, we learned in the Mishnah also if he gave the principal but he didn't pay the extra fifth. Okay, we learned that the extra fifth does not stop the atonement. It works no matter what. He owes it, but it doesn't stop the atonement. Tanura, because he has to give the principal the fifth and the sacrifice. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa, Minayin she may be Me'ilah Sham. Now, but Me'ilah is when you misappropriate temple property. It has the same rules as here. Just like when the person swore falsely, he has to pay back the principal at a fifth and a sacrifice. So also by misappropriation, the person has to pay back. Misappropriation of temple property has to pay back the principal, plus a fifth, and also bring the sacrifice. And we're going to learn one from the other. Okay, so how are we going to learn that the fifth
doesn't hold back. We're going to start with the rules of misappropriation and see that the fifth, which is a parallel case, doesn't hold back. And we'll see we learn one from the other. Tana Rabbanan, we learn. So if the person brought the misappropriation, he brought the principal, but he didn't pay the extra fifth, okay? Or if he paid, pardon me, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. If he brought the principal, he did not bring the sacrifice, I'm sorry. Or if he brought what? If he brought the sacrifice, but he didn't pay the principal, how do I know that he didn't get atonement? Talmud Loma, we learn, okay, with the ram of the asham of the principal, and he is forgiven. So you have to have only slicha by what? He has to pay what? Also the ram and also the asham, the guilt money, and that's how he gets it. So you have to have both. So I know that you have to have both. It's absolutely necessary to have what? Both the sacrifice and the principal to get the atonement for misappropriation. So where do we know? Let's say that if he gave the sacrifice, but he had not yet, but he gave the sacrifice before he brought the principal. How do I know that he's not that doesn't work? Talmud Lomer, because it says be'el ha'asham. What means the ram? The ram from the that goes on the guilt money. Asham bikfar, the guilt money was already done, happened before. Okay. Now I might think that just like what? That the person has to just like the person has to pay also the guilt money and also the ram in order to get atonement. That's absolutely necessary. They're uncompromised. You might think also know that if the fifth also withholds atonement, Talmud Lama, the pasuk says no, it's not true. Okay, it's with the ram and with the guilt money, and he's fulfilled. You see, it's only what? It's the ram and the guilt money, machvim. That's what's absolutely critical. The hegdesh, when it comes to misappropriation, you only need the what? You only need the ram and the guilt money. But the extra fifth is not holding back. He owes the money, but doesn't stop the atonement. Now, from here, we put it together. Up until now, we've been talking about the pasuk of what? Misappropriation. Okay, we're going to learn misappropriation of temple property from stealing from the ger, okay, and lying. We're going to learn the case of stealing from a ger and lying, from misappropriation. Because both of them have the parallel law of the principle and the fifth and the sacrifice. Hagdesh mehadyon, how do I learn laws of misappropriation from the law of stealing from a ger and lying? Okay, ma asham dahasam, just like the word asham, when it came to stealing from the ger, Karen, we proved it earlier, was talking about the principle and not the sacrifice. Asham dahasam, also hear the word asham, which you could think to mean sacrifice. When it came to misappropriation, the Karen, it's also referring to the principle. The Hedya Mehagdish, and how do I learn? How does the stealing from the ger and lying, how does it learn from misappropriation? Just like when it came to misappropriation, that the fifth does not withhold the atonement, he owes it, but it doesn't stop it. Also by stealing from the ger and lying, also so too, in Chomesh Makeh, the fifth, even though he owes it, doesn't hold back, doesn't stop him from getting atonement. Once he gave the sacrifice, he gave the money in the sacrifice. We will come back and Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, now this is very complicated. We're going to read the Mishnah enigmatically because there's nothing else to do, and because we're going to have a big fight about everything in the Mishnah. So we're going to read it like this: the guy stole, and what he stole, he said to his children. Alternatively, he left it to them, he left it to them as an inheritance when he died. They're exempt from paying. We're going to discuss in 1 minute what's the case. If it was something that we would usually translate, if it was real estate, like property or like land or housing, then they're going to have to pay. So we don't know what we're talking about. Amr of Chizda. Chizda said the following statement in general, and we're going to match it to our Mishnah. If a person stole money and the owner, or stole something, and the owners have not given up hope of getting it back, then somebody else came, and somebody else came and ate it up. He grabbed it from the thief, or he ate it, but he took it from the hand of the thief and ate it and destroyed it and gobbled it up. But the thief can now, if he wants, he can collect from the original thief. And if he wants, he can collect from the guy who ate it. My time, what's the reason? The reason is, okay, so long as the original owners have not given up hope, okay, it remains in their domain, and therefore the person who stole it from the owner, and the person who ate it also stole from the owner. So the owner has a right to collect from either one, whoever he wants, because since he never gave up hope, the object remained in his possession. Okay, good. That's the principle of Chisda. So Chisda holds Gazav, as long as the original owner never gave up hope, whether it's the thief or the consumer, the original owner has the victim has a right to collect from others.
For the second owner, if the second thief is in possession, the owner goes after him. The first thief has no obligation. He's off the hook.
I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure at the moment. Just because I'm not on top of it, we're going to come to it. I think it's going to come up shortly. Yeah. It'll come up. Remember, it's one thing if he gets he isn't going to get his object back. Okay. Good. Hagozo machas banav tanan. Okay. Hagozo machas banav. If a person steals, okay, we learned in our Mishnah. If a person steals and he fed it to his children, or alternatively, he left it to them as an inheritance, but they are exempt from paying. Now, notice he left it and they ate it up. Okay, you don't collect. So this is a knockout blow to Rav Chisda. Because according to Rav Chisda, since the guy didn't give up hope, so you can either collect it from the thief or from the consumer. So why can't he collect from the children who gobbled it up? Because it saved his domain. Rav Chisda said no. He says this mission has nothing to do with my principle. When the mission told me what the kids don't have to pay. That was what? That was because that was after the owners had already abandoned hope. So therefore, what? So there was no. It left the domain of the original owner, and therefore the kids don't have to pay back if they ate it up. But Rav Chisda said that they can collect minor. It's only when it was before abandonment of hope. Just 1 second, but we learned what if he left it to them as an inheritance, they don't have to pay. Rav Chama said the following. We discussed this earlier. We always have an argument how to look at inheritors. We look at them. We look at is an inheritor like a buyer or not? In other words, is an inheritor a new domain or not? When the father dies, are the inheritors a new domain or not? Are they like buyers or not? Okay, in other words, are the children the same domain as the estate, or the children are a new domain? Now, what's the point? Okay, so he says you're forced to say here. If we said the kids don't have to pay, it must be that the reason that they don't have to pay is because they are a new domain. Okay, and therefore what? Since the owner gave up hope, and they've got a new domain, so that's why they don't have to give it back. They have to give back the object. Rabbi said no. He says it's not true. It's not true. He says the inheritors are the same domain as the original estate. Then why don't have to pay it back? And the reason why they don't have to pay it back is because they ate it already. That's why it's not there. If it was there, he says you're right. They'd have to give it back because they're the same domain as the father. They have to give it back. But the answer is they ate it. How can you tell me that they ate it up already? I'm going to show you that the Mishnah can't be, when it says that father left them this object, it can't be that the object was eaten. I'm going to show you that it was still there. Why? Because remember, I said to you before, we had a little debate. How do we read the words real estate? I read it to you like real estate, like what that land or houses. The problem is that the word yesh achrayus has we have more than one way to read it. Achrayus means that it has a responsibility. It can mean land, real estate, but it can mean something else. It can mean something that's recognizable. And why is that? Because it's a terrible thing. Imagine if a man stole something and died, and his kids have it, and every day people say, "Oh, right, that's the coat that his father stole. That they're wearing the coat that the father stole from Chaim Yankel. Oh, that's the cow the father stole." Every minute, the father's name is being disgraced. So that stuff also could be called the thing in a Zechariah. So it's a thing that's so clearly identifiable. It's an ongoing disgrace to the father. So we make the kids pay it back, not to disgrace the father for all of eternity. So the Gemara says, we have decrees. We have No, their case because they're we're going to see because they were calling with Shin or Shus. We said we really could say we could debate now. Now 1 second, okay, but
They have no actual knowledge of the death.
yeah.
The father stole it and got it.
Okay, but there's a lot to discuss here still. I have to leave some parts open for the moment. But the point is what he says that so according to Rava, the object doesn't exist anymore. They ate it up. But we're going to try and prove him it's not true that the object exists. Why? Because I'm going to interpret the language of the Yeshbach Rayas that there's responsibility, not the first way it's real estate, but rather that it's a recognizable object that disgraces the father. What are you talking about? How can you tell me that the stuff that the father left him is non-existent? Since we learned in the end, referring to that, it said if it was something that was recognizable, they have to pay. Why? For the honor of the father. They have to pay for the honor of the father. The ratio, so you can't say that the ratio was where they ate it up, and that's why they're not paying because it says it's something that's recognizable since they didn't eat it up. Rabbi says no, so you're making a mistake. The first part is like I said, it's talking about where they consumed it already. Where they consumed already, and the Sefer, when it talks about David Sheish Machrais, it's like I read to you originally, and not the way we said now. Says it's not a new reference to the object that we mentioned. The original object was eaten up. But it said, however, if the father left them land, not if the stolen object was Yesh Machrais, if the father left them lands or houses, have to pay. Why is that? Because in the lifetime of the father, the lien of his theft goes onto his land. So now we said, remember, a lien on land goes from the father to the children, right? And the children have to pay it back. The Gemara says, 1 second. Rabbi Shimon Bray, 1 second. How can you tell me what you're saying? He says, when Rabbi was teaching this Mishnah to his son, Rabbi Shimon, okay, lo davar sheish b'ach rayas mamash, he said to him explicitly, it's not a thing that truly is real estate, which is land and houses. Now, even if it was a cow that the children are plowing with, a donkey that they're driving, so they still have to pay it back. Why? Because of the honor of the father. Okay, and therefore, what? So you see clearly, we are learning that the end was talking about not real estate, but rather what existent. The object of the theft was existing and a disgrace to the father. Ravi says, "Don't worry." He says, "Kishachim." He says, "Don't worry." He says, "I'm not daunted by this quote." Ravi says, "Kishachim." He says, when I die, he says, Avosha is going to come from the heaven to come greet me and to receive me. He's going to love me so much. Why? Because, the Taritz Lavasnitz Kabase, because it's my custom that when Avosha explains something in a brisa, that I consider it authoritative and I explain the Mishnah according to it. He says, the Tani, because we learned, Yosha taught us the following. If a guy stole, and he fed to his children, they're exempt. Or alternatively, if he left them the stolen thing as an inheritance, but look, he spells it out. If the stolen object is existing, okay, they have to what? They have to pay it back. If it doesn't exist, then they're exempt. If the father left them real estate, they have to pay because a lien went on the land. So he says what? Even though you're right, even though Rebbe taught it differently, he says, I have a right to read it the way I'm reading according to Avoshia. Amar Mar, we just learned in the Brisa of Avoshia, we said, what if the object that was no longer existent, the children are exempt from paying? Name a Tevatir to Rav Chisda. 1 second. That should be a caution to Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda said what? That the second guy who ate it can be claimed from. So how come the kids who consume the object can't be claimed from by the thief, by the original owner, by the victim? He says, why? He said, because the Mishnah, when the teaching of Roshia that they don't have to pay is after Yesh, is after the original victim already abandoned hope. Okay, and that's why they're exempt. Okay, because they didn't steal from him. Okay, because there was a transfer of ownership. Okay, and there was no kasha. Amar, we learned furthermore in the Brisa, we said if the stolen object is still there, they have to pay it back. Okay. But if you told me, according to Roshi, that that's after years, name it to Rabbi Rachama, there should be a caution to Rabbi Rachama because you tell me what they have to pay it back and it's after years. According to Rabbi Rachama, since the inheritors are like buyers, it should be abandonment of hope and a change of domain. Rabbi Rachama said, don't worry. He said, Rabbi Roshi said his case. It's years. Like Rav Roshi's case was by definition before the owner gave up hope. We'll call that a daf. Everyone have a wonderful day.
How can he say that yes, duration? There's explicitly
No.
That's all right. Let him do Rabbanan Kaddish and then go.
I'm not going to join him. So there was going to be Body Rock who says, I'm supposed to have to make on a father for this as well. Our goal is not even more. Amen. Amen.